Hello my friends. A few months ago I made this video called the best bang for buck pro video editing workstation, and even though being very popular, a lot of people were commenting on it saying it's a little bit expensive and what about some cheaper options. So this time I set myself on a mission for creating the best bang for buck video editing entry workstation. So a video editing workstation that can fly through 6K footage but is as cheap as possible, and what I would call is the first step into editing workstation or workstation territory. So this is what I built. Okay, check this out. This is a Premiere Pro project over here, as you can see over here. Bear in mind, I'm running an OBS on the background as well, recording this at 30 frames per second full HD. So this is just like a test project to show you what's going to happen or what's happening over here. This is 6K. I downloaded these scripts from Blackmagic website. This is raw 6K. Let me just scroll through. Can you see that? Instantly scrolls through, no problem at all, okay? So this is without any grade or anything added over here, okay? So look, I'm just gonna press play. This is full, as you can see over here. Playback is full. Pressing play and watch this over here. 0 frames dropped during playback. Now let me fast forward a little bit. Now over here, I've got two 6K clips lying on top of each other. This is 6K over here, and so this is 6K over here. Just so you know. As you can see, 6K over here, this one over here, 6K as well. Two 6K clips over here. And now I'm just gonna press play. Watch this. 0 frames dropped. Blows my mind. As you can see, there is an adjustment layer over here. We're gonna put some quite heavy grain on. There's a LUT, basically 2 LUTs on. Contrast, it's added. So let me show you what I've done so you can see over here. On the basic corrections, you know, we've got contrast, highlights going on over here. And then on the creative tab, we've got a full LUT on over here. So things are happening over there, okay? It's quite a heavy thing. Let me go back to editing tab. So 6K, okay guys, watch this. Full, press play, 0 frames dropped. 0 frames dropped. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is playing 6K, 2 6K clips, and we have dropped some frames. 13 frames dropped, okay. Sorry guys, some frames have been dropped. So when you're on 2 6Ks and then a lot on top, that's when you start dropping frames. See that over here? This is one of my favorite features about this. If I had named this PC, I'd probably call it Knight Rider because of this little guy over here. So this little red LED is breathing, as you can see over here. Does anyone remember Knight Rider? Kit? Anyone?
Knight Rider.
David Hasselhoff?
The helpless, the powerless.
That's really cool little RGB like accent over here. But the whole PC, the theme is it's red and black. There's not a single component that is any other color. It's red and black. I know what you're thinking. If you're seeing from this angle, you're seeing that, wait a second, there's a little bit of blue somewhere in there. And yes, that is the SSD Sabrent rocket over there, but I've bought the black heatsink for it. That's gonna cover it absolutely, but it's arriving today. I just haven't had a chance to put it on yet, but we'll film in this video. On the B-roll, you'll see it's all black. So there are a few things that you probably wanna know. How powerful it is, how much does it cost, and why didn't you use some other parts? So first of all, I paid £750 or just under for all this kit over here, okay? Now this was bought during the epidemic and the prices are all over the place, so I'm quite certain that in a few months or things like that, the prices can go much further down. And actually I've got another video coming up where I'm explaining every single part, why I chose this part, and some alternatives where you can save even more money. So stay tuned for that, and if you're watching this later, you can find this, you know, linked up there if it's already out. This is the first part of this PC video. There's three actually. There's one where you can see me build this PC, where I'm building this. It's like about an hour long, every single bit, so anyone who can build this from start to finish till installing all the drivers, you can watch this. Then this is where we're reviewing this PC, about all the benchmarks and what it can do. And then there's the third one, why I chose all these parts. Both of these videos are coming out very soon. So you could get this slightly cheaper as well than £750, but I paid £750. This is here in the UK, and pounds, you know, that's our currency. If you're watching this from America or some other places in the world, you can actually be quite certain that the prices vary roughly around the same. So you can expend between $750, for example, to £1,000, somewhere around there, or might be even cheaper. Another thing you might want to know is, what does entry workstation mean? Okay, so when we're talking about a workstation, that means that you're kind of earning money with the workstation, or you're using it for some type of professional use, whether it's video editing, photo editing, animation, you know, things like that, where you're actually thinking about starting a career in there, or you already got a career and you're just wanting, you know, something that can do that. Workstation also involves, and these are my opinions, a lot of multitasking. So for me, the workstation has to have at least 6 cores, and that's kind of my first step into the workstation, is you need to have a processor that's got at least 6 cores. 4 cores we're talking about already, like, okay, you know, 4 cores is normal. Laptops and things like that that come with 4 cores in 2020. And for me, for it to be good enough for a workstation, it needs to handle 4K and 6K editing. As you saw, it can do very easily. Before we're gonna go into the specs, let me quickly go over the I/O. There's 2 USB 3.0 slots on the top over here, as well as headphone jack and the mic jack over here, with another button that controls these LED lights, which is the button on the top over there. And then this LED over here, there's a little button that controls over there. On the back over there, we have 4 times USB Gen 3.2. We've got a LAN port, we've got 3 display ports on the graphics card and 1 HDMI port, 2 USB 2.0 slots on the back over there, and then some audio ports over there. So let's go over the specs, okay? The brain, the main guy over there, the CPU, is the Ryzen 3600X processor, which is a 6-core, 12-thread processor. Very, very powerful processor for very good money. Next up, the GPU is the Zotac Gaming 1660. For RAM, we're using 16 gigabytes of 3200 megahertz RAM. For SSD, we're running the Sabrent Rocket 256 gigabyte M.2 or NVMe drive over there. For power supply, over there, we've got a 650 watt power supply from EVGA G5. The motherboard over there is the MSI B450 Gaming Plus Max motherboard. And last of all, the case is Phanteks P300. So it's quite stealth looking machine over here with a lot of style and a lot of power. So let's go into some of the benchmarks and what this can do and compare it with some of the other machines that are out there. First of all, I created my own kind of video editing project that's 10 minutes long. So usually online you see people comparing PCs and rendering tests. There's usually just one codec or one file or things like that, but I wanted to create a 10-minute kind of demo timeline where there's different color gradings, you know, there's upscaling, downscaling, faster clips, slower clips, which is very hard on the processor. And then there's some video effects, and then audio effects. There's 2 layers of audio. So something that you would typically see on a timeline when editing like a highlight film or music video or, you know, whatever client video, something like that. So it's a 10-minute timeline with packed full of different things going on the timeline. This machine over here, it's a 4K timeline, by the way, and we're exporting it into 4K settings as well, okay? So this 3600X did it in 14 minutes and 13 seconds, which is very, very impressive considering this is a 10-minute timeline, which means you can pretty much play it back in 75%, and that's how fast it renders the whole thing out. I also built that best bang for buck Pro Editing Workstation, which run the 3900X processor. So doing the exact same test on that one, that 3900X did it in 10 minutes and 29 seconds. Okay, so that is a 12-core processor, which almost edits it in real time. Now, after that, I upgraded my 3900X to 3950X, which is a 16-core processor, and that one did it in 9 minutes and 56 seconds. As you can see, the scaling doesn't go as linear. Before this machine and before that Best Bang for Buck Pro Editing Workstation, I was running an Intel-based system that was running on Intel i7 5820K, so 5 series. It's a little bit older processor, but it was overclocked at 4 gigahertz. When rendering the same clip through that machine, we're getting 18 minutes and 5 seconds. So miles bigger times over there. And now this MacBook over here, this is the 2019 base model of 13-inch MacBook Pro, which has the same processor, same things as the base model of 2020 MacBook Pro, just so you know. Running the same project on here, this guy renders it over 1 hour. After 1 hour, I just switched it off. I thought, I can't wait when this finishes it. I don't know how long it would have done, but after an hour, this machine is almost half the price as this MacBook Pro, okay? And it does it in so much faster than this over here. It's not a fair comparison really, but just some comparisons over there. Next up, we have Cinebench R20 scores, okay? They're coming up on this screen over here, and why I think Cinebench R20 is one of the best scores for doing benchmarks for video editing, or if you're wondering how does it compare in Adobe Premiere Pro or Adobe products, then from my experience and my testing, when doing Cinebench R20 scores, they scale very similarly to Adobe or Premiere Pro projects. So our 3600K did the single core in 490 and the multi-score in 3685. As you can see, I've compared 2 different machines over there. The same as you can see the MacBook and my old i7, and then the 13950X PC and the 3900X. The interesting thing is I've also added the Mac Pro, which is 2019 Mac Pro, the cheese grater Mac Pro. And as you can see, the multi-score over here, I couldn't find the single core performance, but we can expect 3600K to be much better at single thread performance as well, definitely. But even the multi-score performance, that is the £6,000 entry Mac Pro, is slightly slower than our £750 editing PC. Okay, so just to put in perspective how powerful this guy over here is. Next up, we have Geekbench 5, which is just another different CPU benchmarking test over here. We're seeing quite similar things, obviously. As it gets more expensive, we're getting much better scores or things like that, so it scales quite, nicely. But you can see over here that the MacBook Pro is almost 50% slower in the CPU performance as this guy over here. And then the interesting thing over here is that in here we have a single thread score for the Mac Pro that's 8 core, and as you can see, our guy over here is almost 20% better in the single core or thread performance over there. Another thing that's very important over here is the disk read speeds, okay? Now obviously the one editing PC that I did for the Pro Editing Workstation or Best Bang for Buck Pro Editing PC, over there we're using the PCIe Gen 4, which is much faster, transfer speeds and things like that. This one over here is PCIe Gen 3, so that's why it isn't as fast, but it's still very, very interesting. We're comparing some of the specs over here. Then our SSD over there, that's 250 gigabytes, which is the same size on the Mac Pro base model. And we are about 4% faster on the read speed, which is very, very interesting, all right? And then our write speed obviously isn't as fast. The write speed is about 1000 megabytes per second, whereas our Mac Pro gets around 3000, so it's 3 times faster and things like that. But then as you can see, it's faster on the PCIe Gen 4, and then even my old PC, I put the same drive in with 500 gigabytes, but the write speed on the 500 gigabyte one is much, much faster than this 256 gigabytes. So if you want to opt in for the 500 gigabytes of the exact same SSD, then I definitely recommend that, because you're getting more than 2 times faster write speeds as on this one, Okay, I'm gonna leave all the links in the description as well when I'm talking about, so you'll see alternatives and these parts, and so you'll find loads of helpful information and links in the description below. But obviously also this MacBook Pro over here, you know, benchmarking or doing the test over here, the read speed is so much slower, you know, almost 60, 55, 56% slower read speed on this MacBook Pro, but the write speed is about 50% better as well, so just so you know. As you can see of all of these benchmarks, this little guy, because it is quite a small case actually, is very, very powerful. And I like the design as well. So some of the good sides, what this has is it's very affordable, because a lot of people thinking, oh, I'll buy some kind of laptop, you know, XPS 15 or Razer Blade or MacBook Pro, and I'll edit on the laptop, whereas this is so much cheaper. You know, you can even add a screen and keyboard and things, and you're still not reaching the £1,000 mark. You could easily, you know, beat the price on any of the laptops. And this one, you'll have much better editing experience. So it's very, very affordable. Next of all, it's very powerful, as you already saw. I can't praise the style of this enough. It looks very stealth, okay? There's no RGB really on this. It's all just red and black, apart from this little breathing over here, and then on the top, the power button, they have little LED of red around, but the rest of the things is just red. Also, another thing is it's very, very easily upgradable. The way I've configured this is that there's 2 free RAM slots, for example. So if you want to, you can easily buy double the RAM, and then you have 32 gigabytes of RAM. You don't have to, you know, sell your old sticks and get better sticks. Just get double the amount. There's 4 slots over there, because some of the cheaper motherboards only had 2. So I thought this is not very good for upgrading options. Also, another thing is there's 6 SATA ports, which means that you can put a lot of hard drives in. Inside the case, there is 2 hard drive bays in the back over there, and then 2 SSD trays in the back over there, so 4 of these, but you could also add 6 if you wanted to somewhere else, mount them somewhere, you know, you could basically do that. So some of the things that some of you who are watching this might need or want to add to this PC as an extra features, but not everyone needs them. So one of the things is there is no Wi-Fi built in over here. You can buy a cheap, you know, USB Wi-Fi dongle if you want over there, or you can buy a Wi-Fi PCIe card that just slots into the over there, and then you'll have Wi-Fi coming out from the back and kind of built in Wi-Fi, which you can get for a little bit like 30-40 quid. I'll leave some links in the description as well. Another thing is 10 gigabyte Ethernet port. So maybe you already have a NAS storage, or you're using to edit things in the NAS, then you can just buy the extension card and slot it in there. Now the thing is, with entry editing workstation like these, I don't think a lot of people have NAS storage systems over there. That's not really necessary, but for some people it might be necessary, so I'm going to leave the link in the description. So the last thing that probably everyone is thinking is, why are you only using 256 gigabytes of, you know, storage inside there? Where am I going to put all my video footage, and where am I going to do all that? Now, the reason I did that is because everyone's got their different workflows of how they work with their footage and things like that. Some people have loads of external hard drives and they just edit off them. You know, they have some SSDs, things like that. Then there is no need to have some hard drives inside. Now, some people just use NAS storage, like I mentioned before. Some people like to have hard drives and SSDs inside and have it all working in the same machine. For that reason, I didn't add the hard drives. But my recommendation is that obviously NAS is the best. If you have just something like that and then connect it to NAS, this would be the best editing solution. So all your files and projects are all stored up and safe in a NAS storage system. But if you don't have that, then I would recommend like a 3 storage part editing workflow. So one is where your operating system is on, as well as the editing program, which is on that OS drive, okay? And then you would have another drive where you would store your project, which would be on an SSD, because we want that to be fast as well. For that reason, you could get like a 2.5-inch SSD drive that put it on the back over there, and then use that as your project drive. I'm gonna leave some examples in the description. And then last of all, you'd have like a storage where you would store your video files, you know, and then for that you would use hard drives, because that's the cheapest option. You don't need SSDs or things like that. You could use 2 hard drives, run them in RAID, so they back up, so they're quite safe as well. Now, optionally, you could also have another drive that is for cache, but that is not really necessary. you could have another SSD where you store all your cache for the projects, which makes it faster as well, and means that not one hard drive maybe be bottlenecked. How I'm editing and what I've tested, it's perfect with just 3 steps of the storage solution. Now, given this PC a lot of compliments, and the last thing I'd like to say is some of the bad sides or things that maybe you have to consider when buying this, is that the only bad sides I can think of about this is it is quite loud. It's loud because I'm using the stock cooler that came with the PC, okay? And because that PC cooler is a very small fan, it's a performance fan, it runs like 3,000 rounds per minute, which is very, very fast. And when it kicks in, it's gonna go quite fast. So if the loudness is an issue for you, I recommend going with a different cooler. And if this silence is, you know, what you're after, then go with like a Noctua cooler or things like that. I'm gonna leave a link in the description if you want to check that out. Even if you go water coolers are a little bit more louder because of the pump makes noise and things like that, from what I've tried from my experience, but it doesn't really matter. But for the cost sake, that's why I went with the stock cooler, because we want to keep the cost down as much as possible. And this is what I would consider the best bang for buck editing workstation, whether you're a creative on video, photos, or creative design. This is what I would consider the best bang for buck what you can buy over there. Anything less than that, I wouldn't call it, you know, you're starting to bottleneck or it's not worth it really. Anything above that, it's not starting to scale the same way linearly, that you're paying more and you're getting more things like that. This is the review of the best bang for buck entry workstation, and I hope you liked it. If you want to know why I chose every single part and some of the alternatives or some other things that I would recommend with it, check out this video coming out over there or already in the description. It will definitely be very helpful, and also help you to decide whether you need some of the features or you want to opt up for some of the other features, because depending on your workflow or what you're editing with or what you're working with, you might want to opt up for some of the things and maybe go down for some of the other things. So it will be very helpful for you. If you also want to know how to build this, the build video is coming out very soon as well. Just need to edit hours and hours of footage of me putting this together, so it takes a little bit of time. As always, if you have any other questions, my friends, leave them in the comment section below. I'll meet you down there. We'll have a chat. We'll try to answer your questions. And if you did like this video, hit that like button. It actually makes a difference. I would massively appreciate that. Subscribe if you haven't already. More content like this is coming out every single week. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.